Thank you for having me at DevOps Days Edinburgh. And I'd like to talk to you about wasting time in Agile and DevOps. Well, it seems a little bit weird, but there are some ways to do so. Some things in advance. So when I created this talk, I ended up with a slide deck of 67 slides, which was far too many for the time frame. So I reduced this to now I think 27 slides, which is still challenging in 30 minutes. So please understand that we won't have time for questions at the end of the talk, but I will be around on the conference here today and tomorrow, and I will be happy to talk to you about questions, about remarks, about your stories of how to waste time in organizations. So, something about me, I'm a software developer, and I'm already a software developer for a long time. When I started to find my passion for computers and for software development, internet browsers were not pre-installed on computers. Wouldn't have made sense because at that time there was no internet. So since then, I did what software developers do, develop software and watch science fiction. And of course, like we already heard in the keynote by Stuart, thank you for that, Star Wars is closely related to DevOps and Agile. And I also added some quotes on the slides, hope you find them entertaining. And I want to remark that I also have quotes by Peter Drucker and Thomas Edison, and these are not Star Wars characters. So, during my career, my job title became a little bit more complex, but if asked, I still respond, I'm a software developer, because, it has to do with it still. So, my job is at Bobo Systems to help teams to develop and deliver software to run a good communication culture with customers and act as a consultant, as some kind of leader in that context. I have the opportunity since 2018 to lead a research project in cooperation with the Kiel University on how to apply DevOps and Lean principles, values, and methods to fog computing and system integration in manufacturing. And of course, I'm absolutely convinced that Agile is the best way to address complex problems in a more and more complex world and to hit a moving target. But recently, we discovered a disturbing thing that when we approach customers and mention the word Agile, we find ourselves in a discussion where we definitely don't want to be in. We are justifying Agile. Obviously, these customers made some bad experiences with companies claiming to be Agile. Moreover, a friend sent me a blog post, a link to a blog post, where Agile is compared with medical healers and superstitions and labeled as hocus pocus. My first reaction was to be angry about the ignorance of this guy. But thinking through it, I came to the conclusion that observed from the outside, if we're not effective in what we are doing, the things we are doing, the post-its, the boards, the meetings, and so on, may seem like a bunch of meaningless rituals. So at this point, we should stop and think about, are we doing the right things? And this question is not easy to answer. What are the right things? The answer, like usual, is it depends. But we may agree on being efficient without being effective is not what we want to be. At first, we want to be effective, and then we need to be efficient. So what is going wrong here? This is, I try to explain it. This is just maybe this has something to do with our behavior in companies. For example, our behavior is shaped by our education, by our previous experiences, and we learned in school and in university that errors are bad. So we learn also by experience that errors can't be avoided. So what we develop is strategies to name them differently, blame others, or completely hide errors. And we have to look at ourselves if we act like that. Knowledge is the other thing we gain in education, but we have rare opportunities to apply the knowledge. Soft skills are very important for Agile and for DevOps, for the culture, for working in teams, but they are rarely taught in university. On the other side, we have a history in industrial countries which is was very focused on efficiency. Taylorism and Fordism are focused on efficiency, which makes sense when it comes to industrial mass production, because the goal is clear. It's always the same goal: produce many items fast and cheap. So let's start with the opportunities I found for wasting time. It's an incomplete list, you may imagine, so don't worry if you experience other things. I could not take any. But when talking to people, I find that time waster number one in companies are still meetings. A classic. And you can already tell in the preparation phase of a meeting if it will be effective or not. And a mindset I experienced in companies during my whole career frequently was a mindset of preparing to win. And symptoms of that is a long agenda, or participants not to be informed about the agenda in advance, so they have no chance to prepare for the meeting. And many people invited to the meeting just to fill up the room without being involved in any of the topics. So, of course, this is a waste of time because the participants definitely lack the context to contribute to the agenda and to the meeting, and this is very demotivating. Something else you can tell from the body language when you observe a meeting and people sit in the meeting relaxed, work with their mobile phones or with their laptop open, they're showing disengaged behavior. And anybody who's joining a meeting or sitting in a meeting should look at him or herself if you fall into this behavior, and you can contribute to the meeting very effectively by not acting like this, because this is somehow viral behavior. If you start with it, others will follow. But it also works the other way around. If you stay focused and you contribute in the meeting, then others will follow as well. So it's up to any participant of the meeting to make it a success. So, wasting time in leadership. Number two, again, we are shaped by our history and what we've learned in the past. And we learned in the past a management style that is called command and control. A leader making decisions from the background, moving the figures on the board, and is barely visible for those who are leaded. For Agile and DevOps, a better style is, and we see this in many examples, a management style based on trust. That means the leader is visible, accessible, and he or she can be compared to a gardener who's creating the environment for creativity. And of course, this gardener knows grass is not growing faster if you pull. So, as a leader, if you place yourself mentally and physically on sea level, you may waste time. If you hear yourself saying, I have more important things to do, you're very likely in this trap. Think over it. Go to the people who do the work, take the opportunity to get first-hand information and make better decisions. And yeah, that may save time, even it seems to be taking time that is not well spent. So, number 3, Agile and DevOps and culture relates very much to communication. It's important in organization. You can waste time without knowing it. Communication is very difficult, especially for software developers sometimes. So, if a colleague approaches you and asks for help, do not take away the work and do it yourself, because it's faster and you seem to save time. But by doing so, you're sending a message, and the message is, I don't trust you to do it. And this is demotivating for the colleague, and of course, you're also missing the opportunity to teach the skills necessary to solve the problem. Number 4, in the opportunity to waste time, tools. What you see in organizations is completely the opposite of what the Toyota production system and the Agile Manifesto is very strict about. Tools serve the people and the process, and not the other way around. But when you experience in companies that the management decides to use a specific tool and labels it as a strategic decision, you may think that this is wasting time, because an opportunity is missed to involve the people who have to work with the tool into the decision process and motivate them to make the decision a success. Labeling such a decision as strategic just communicates and sends the message, don't ask, just accept it. So, waste of time requirements, number 5. When I took this photo, when I saw this truck on the street, I was reminded in technique we sometimes use in software development. We are building a bigger solution because we do not have enough information about the real requirements, just to make sure it somehow does the job. Yeah, this is maybe a waste of time. Another waste of time, from my experience, is asking customers to write down a list of prioritized requirements. Seems to make sense, but you're lacking the context of these requirements. And it's a waste of time, because you have to get this context later, and this is difficult. Starting with the customer from the start, work together and find the best solution for the problem will give the context and will save time, even if it takes long to get the requirements right. Who's software developer? Hands up. How many? We're not wasting time, aren't we? Never. But some people think software developers waste time. And sometimes we do. For example, when I meet software developers who say something like that, my code is the documentation, and refuse to document the code, I know time is wasted. And an opportunity is missed that we reflect upon our solution we created while documenting it, see it from another perspective and make it better. So the same applies to tests, by the way. We are all working in tech companies, and innovation is important for our company and for our job. So how can it be a waste of time? Time waster number one in innovation I found is the bright idea. I wrote uncountable lines of code which never made it into production because somebody claimed we know our customers and had a bright idea. So we implemented it and nobody needed it. So there are better ways to do this. But be aware of somebody approaches you with a bright idea and no customer to be actually willing to pay for it, that might be a waste of time. So many different difficult things like culture, learning, teamwork, effectivity, accessibility, and so many things more. Do we have such a difficult job to tackle all these things and do these things right, not accidentally demotivating our colleagues by sending the wrong message, and so on and so on? This is so difficult, but fortunately, we have this amazing tool between our ears, and and this has a very amazing mechanism that helps us to find a way out of this complexity and manage it. And this tool is already known for many years. Aristotle, 300 before Christ, already said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." If we apply this to Agile and DevOps, we may say being agile then is not an act, but a habit. And habits are what we have to look at. We have to identify the bad habits that stand in our way to reach the goals we are committed to, and replace them with good habits that help us to reach our goal. Sounds easier like it is. So I stopped smoking in my life many times. I was successful at the end, not smoking now for many years. But everybody who tried that knows changing habits is very, very difficult. I can recommend a very good book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, to get into this topic. And another one with practical advice, how to change. It's called Immunity to Change by Robert Keegan and Liza Laskov-Leahy. I like these books because they help me to get better in what I'm doing. So, one advice when you're starting to think about wasting time in your organization or your team, don't approach your team members and telling them you're wasting time or you're having bad habits. You probably won't like the response. Improve yourself first. Watch yourself. maybe think about if your behavior contributes to wasting time or demotivating others. And now I'm already finished. Thank you very much.